Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video, we're going over the Enhancement Shaman Shadowlands Ultimate Guide. This is going to be everything you need to know from the new systems about Covenants, the Conduit system, the Soulbind system, Legendaries, what build I'm going to be using to level, what builds am I going to use in PvE for Mythic Plus, Raid, Single Target, AoE. We have a lot to go over, so we're going to go ahead and jump into it. I want to let you know, though, we all have all these resources and even more on our Discord channel under the resource section. It's an awesome resource for you guys, and if you guys have suggestions for us to include things there, let me know. But I also have this Google Doc. This Google Doc is something I put together for all the specs of Shaman. You can see the multiple tabs. There's links down in the description. We'll be referring to it here a lot, but this is where everything you need to know is going to be locked and loaded. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it with the leveling builds. Number one, the leveling builds. What build am I going to use to go from 50 to level 60? Well, first of all, I am going to go as Enhance. I do think that will be the fastest spec to get up there. Now, why is that? Well, one big reason is the mobility. Mobility is going to be a big factor with running around the caves, running around certain areas you can't mount, all that stuff. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot, but from a smoothness of play, I like the fact that, one, we got Ghost Wolf, but I'm going to be running Spirit Wolf. I'm going to be running Feral Lunge to be able to gap close. I'm also going to be running Spectral Recovery in War Mode. I'm going to be going pretty fast. I'm basically going to vroom vroom all around, almost as fast as Sonic. Otherwise, I'm going to be going Elemental Blast. I think Elemental Blast will be more useful than Forceful Winds, mainly because I maybe can carry over Maelstrom Weapon buffed stacks from one target to the next. And I think Elemental Blast just does a lot of damage right now. Otherwise, Storm Flurry, Elemental Assault, passive, main rotation abilities, tying into my Storm Strikes, that'll be good. Generating Maelstrom, Feral Lunge, like I mentioned, for mobility. You can go Nature's Guardian if you think you're going to need defensives, but I don't really think you're gonna. I'm going to go Sundering, just easy to use. Ascendance, 3-minute cooldown, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, over here on the right side, I'm going to be going Shamanism. This is the number one reason why, one of the number one reasons why I think Enhance is going to be one of the fastest to level. I'm going to be able to give myself and my party member Bloodlust every 1 minute. And that's going to be pretty nice in PvE for questing, for big mobs, for little mobs, for packs, whatever it is. I already mentioned I'm going to go Spectral Recovery, which is going to be just for movement speed. For the third talent, you can change this up a bunch. Number one, you can go Thunder Charge to get up Bloodlust faster, or Ascendance faster, or your cooldowns. You could go Ride the Lightning if you're going to pull a lot of mobs, as this does do pretty decent damage. Or you could go Counter-Strike Totem, a passive way to reflect damage that mobs attack you with, and then they get reflected and damage themselves. So these are different options. Swelling Waves, of course, is the more defensive option if you want to do heals. As you probably know by now, the healing of an Enhanced Shaman is actually pretty awesome. So that's pretty much it. But mainly it's about mobility, cooldowns that will be coming up between while you're running around and while you're ghost wolfing around and all that. So that's why I'm going this build. I'm also going to be grabbing things like Abyssal Healing Potions, Consumable Foods, a Flask, movement speed items like Gun Shoes, Swiftness Potion, Rocket Boots, just to make myself move around faster. Now, I'm not going to go at it super sweaty. I mean, I'm just going to be leveling, having fun with my brother. And you can definitely come by the stream. We're going to be streaming that at a pre-launch event, and then a launch, when we're playing the game, we'll be streaming. So definitely come by. We're going to be doing some giveaways for a bunch of different stuff, thanks to some partners that we're working with. Now, otherwise, that's that. That's leveling. Let's move on. Next, Covenants. Covenants is probably the number one biggest contentious, confusing system out there. And it's because every Covenant, there's 4 of them if you didn't know, you have to align to one of them when you hit max level only. Remember that. When you hit max level, you have to align to one of the Covenants. Now, when you join a Covenant, your spec gets a certain ability given to you, and a new ability based on the Covenant. And you also get the Covenant-specific ability. So, it depends on the Covenant. We'll get into that, and I'm going to show you each of the Covenant abilities. But let me first of all just say, Enhance, pretty awesome. I'm really pumped to play it. I think in PvE it's going to do great. In PvE only, I actually think it has a bunch of viable Covenants. I think that they're relatively competitive, except for Necrolord. Necrolord I cannot get to make feel good. I think there's some effort. I got to figure some stuff out. Maybe it's Fire Nova builds. Maybe it's Stormkeeper builds. But I'll show you how they all work briefly. But my recommendation, if you're going to be Enhanced Shaman, and it's in this spreadsheet, you can see, I've basically given recommendations for all the Shaman specs, as well as damaging numbers that I've gotten from just simple testing. And again, this is not based off Sims. This isn't based off any of that. You'll be getting that pretty soon once those open up. But this is just based on me hitting the buttons and telling you what the damage is. And then all different combinations in case you multi-spec. I know that's a huge question. If you PvE/PvP, which one should I go? And so there's a lot of other things about Covenants, like the Conduits and Soulbinds, which we'll get into shortly. But I want to just point out my recommendation, because I'm asked all the time, for Enhanced Shaman, I've ranked it as Venthyr as being the best kind of all around. Now, it's not the one that does the most single target damage. That's technically Night Fae. But I personally think that Venthyr is the option for enhanced for PvE and for PvP. Mainly, I mean, PvP, you don't really have another option, I don't think. But for PvE, there are some more competitive ones. And again, I recommend you investigate this yourself. Make your own decision once I show you the different abilities. I'll give you some facts about it. But test it out. See which one you're into. And I recommend go with that one. Don't go with the best one. I know most people are going to ask me that question, but that's just my thoughts on that. So let me go ahead and let's show you what each of the covenants looks like, and we'll talk about each of them as we kind of go through them because there's some nuances. Well, let's go ahead and start with my recommendation, which is Venthyr. Why do I choose Venthyr? Well, one of the big reasons is you can't mess it up. You can't mess it up. It's an on-target ability. A lot of the other ones are based on a totem or based on an AoE puddle, right, that you have to aim on the ground. You can't mess it up. The other thing is that the ability, which hits 5 targets with a lot of damage, and it also heals 5 allies with just hitting 1 target, is a pretty big deal. The other fact is that it does scale off of your Maelstrom weapon, and the cast, which is usually I think it's like 1.3 second cast, is now instant cast. So this is what it looks like if you were to use it. Let's go ahead and use it over here on these mobs. So I have my 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon. If you don't know what that is, that's what makes my cast abilities become instant on an enhanced Shaman. We're very excited about that, this X-Pack. If I press it, it does a pretty good amount of damage, and every time it crits, it reduces the cooldown. All right, we're on the Night Fae. Basically, the thing about Night Fae is this. It's been a little unclear. Does the Maelstrom weapon stacks affect the channel? And from our testing in the Lattice build, it does not. But that could change because, the Maelstrom weapon stack says increases the damage done, right? It doesn't make the channel instant cast. I'm just giving you some facts, right? So that's good to know. It does scale off of Earthen Spike. It was increasing the damage that, when you use Earthen Spike, it does plus 20% nature damage. And this is nature damage. The Fae Transfusion is nature damage, which is important to note because your mastery actually increases all fire, frost, nature. So it's actually increasing the damage of this channel. I actually foresee that once later in the patch, people are getting much more mastery. This is going to be a popular one. I think in PvE particularly, it's going to slam. PvP, again, it's hard to get this channel off. But this is what it looks like, basically. Ready? So I'll even Earthen Spike, and then I'll do the channel. It does an X amount of damage across, for one target. Let's say it does 17k damage total for one target. But if you split it to 3, it still does 17k, but it does it, divided by 3 to each target. And so there you can see it's hitting for, 900, critting for 1.7, and it hits 7 times on each target. That's how it works. So that's the Night Fae ability. Just wanted to point that out. And again, all the mastery scaling ideas that you're getting in your brain, that does work with it, including this one, right? Elemental Blast Mastery. So it's think about it. But for now, I still recommend Venthyr. Let's go ahead and switch over to Kyrian. All right, for Kyrian, the ability is this totem. Basically, you can put down this totem, and then your next offensive ability will pop it, making it do damage. Ready? Popped. It does damage, okay? So it does a certain amount of damage. It does damage to 6 mobs around it, and you can relocate it. So I'll relocate it over here. I'll use another offensive ability, right? It pops again. I'll use one more. Pops again. Now, if I use heals, I'll use a heal. It pops a heal AoE. Healing up to 6 allies, so that's actually good. It has a healing utility, and it also has damaging. I think this one will be nice for PvE for Mythic Pluses. The animation is sick on it. That totem's looking beautiful too. But so I don't think it's a bad option. PvE, I don't think it's a bad option. PvP, I think it's tough to manage because basically you need to make sure your enemies are in that circle, and if you're spamming globals for offensives, you could miss it, right? You like if I put it down, for example, let's pretend that's it, and then I melee someone before they get in it. Oh, then I wasted one pulse, so then I could hold off doing damage, but now I'm not doing damage. So it's a tough one to manage in PvE, but that's how it works. And this is, by the way, the beautiful Covenant set for Kyrian. The wings are glorious. Remember, all the back pieces are for each race. Now let's go ahead and switch to the last one, Necrolord. So for Necrolord, the reason that's why it's a little weird for Enhance is that I put up Flame Shocks, and then basically what's going to happen is, based on what targets are Flame Shocked, right? So I'll put a Flame Shock on this guy, right? And let's say I'm doing my DPS rotation. Now I'm going to Primordial Wave, which will do about 1,000 damage, and then my next Lightning Bolt will hit all targets lightning bolted. So how that worked, and it's a little bit hard to see, right, is that I lightning bolted one target, and then a lightning bolt is repeated, and it hits all the targets flame shocked, which kind of seems like, okay, maybe that's interesting. that could be good. But the problem that I have with it is that usually our rotation is not focused on Flame Shock. Flame Shock is much more kind of a focal point of Ellie. So for an enhanced shaman to be focusing on Flame Shocking, it means that I'm going to be not using Frost Shock, which is our main way of doing AoE damage in Mythic Pluses. It means that I may be taking that as a higher priority than some other rotations, like abilities like Storm Strikes or Lava Lashes, which to me, it just kind of feels a little strange, especially when we think about it like if you're in single target, it doesn't really seem to do a whole lot on because it's not generating anything. It's depending on your spender. It's basically doubling your spender on a single target. And if you're in an AoE situation, you're going to be flame shocking, trying to like get another flame shock out, another flame shock out. Like using all these globals, like let's say you have 3 targets, you're going to use 3 globals for a flame shock, flame shocks, or 3 for Flame Shock, another one for Primordial Wave, and then you're going to use a Lightning Bolt. Like, that's 5 globals, that you're not using Storm Strikes, Crash Lightnings, Lava Lashes, Chain Lightnings, right? It doesn't even link with Chain Lightning. So it's really a quirky one. And it doesn't have the, that Venthyr does, or Night Fae even is putting out 17k damage. If I looked at how much damage that just did, right, which does, it's so hard to quantify, as I got Lightning Bolts out, I casted 1 Lightning Bolt, I got 2 bonus ones. So I did about 4k extra damage on 2 targets every 40 seconds versus like 30k on Venthyr versus 17k on Night Fae. I know these aren't the exact comparison numbers to use, but it's just, to me, it seems very kind of odd. And it's too bad that it doesn't link into Storm Strike. So the reason I'm going over this in so much depth is because this is one that I just don't feel fits with Enhance. And unfortunately, what this means is if you're multi-speccing and you're going to play Ellie, Resto, and Enhance, it means you can't really bring Enhance into Necrolord if you're focusing on the different abilities. There are some, Soulbinds, which we'll get into later, and I'll show you a way that you can look at them up yourself, but I wanted to show you how this works. And with that being said, that covers all the Covenant abilities. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. So my recommendation for Enhance, PvP, PvE, is Venthyr. Again, pick your own destiny, right? Now let's go into the Soulbinds. Here we'll talk about Soulbinds in general. In the spreadsheet, I have all the Covenants here with all their interesting Soulbinds picked. And on the far right side, I'm having a Soulbind calculators, which you'll be able to pick for, like, this was for, Ellie, right? And so you'll be able to see what I recommend there. But you'll also be able to see all the interesting ones across all the specs, across all of the Covenants. Like, this is all the interesting ones for Venthyr, which we'll talk about specifically. The interesting ones for Night Fae. Oh, you get Mastery here. Interrupts do damage. It's just a good way to drill down, because it's hard to get all this information in one place because it's spread over so many Covenants. Like, you won't be able to explore this stuff in-game. You'll have to use calculators and that stuff, so I hope this helps you. But let's go ahead and look at my recommendations for Enhance. I have a single target recommendation, an AoE target for PvE, and then a PvP. Let's just start off with the PvP one. I recommend going on General Draven. Why? Because it's the more defensive option. Enhance still hasn't gotten that huge defensive buff that we really wanted, or not even huge, we just wanted one thing. But what this is going to do is it's going to give you some great benefits, and really this tree is what makes Enhance a little bit tankier, which is a pretty big thing. It's a pretty big deal. Number 1, Surface and Stone. Damage taken below, and it's supposed to be 40% health in game, is reduced by 10% upon your death. You leave a stone husk behind that shatters, inflicting damage. But that's not really that important. What's important, you're not going to kamikaze, right? You're going to be taking 10% less damage under 40% health. That's really good for our survivability. I mean, it's not really good, but it's something, right? Now, this, so then this is another one, which is actually quite good, and I haven't been using it as much as I should, but Door of Shadows grants a shield that absorbs damage equal to 15% of your maximum health. Basically, you could use this at the beginning of the game, you could use it anytime during the game, and the fact is, if they interrupt your Door of Shadows channel, it's just the Shadow School, so you're not really locked out of anything else, and it's even a good way to bait a kick or get a shield. So it's something that you should definitely be using. Now, I'm going to skip my Conduit choices, but this is just something, that's just perk, little thing. And then this one, which is hard to use, but it could be valuable, especially with Enhance's heals being crazy. Standing still for at least 4 seconds grants you 10% increased stamina and 4% increased healing done. That's not bad. Listen, it's not the best one, but it's not bad. This effect persists for 6 seconds after you start moving, so not bad. And you have some other healing multipliers we're now going to talk about. But that's basically the tree that I recommend you go in case you want to PvP as Enhance. Now, let's talk about, and we'll talk about the Conduits in a second. We have the whole spreadsheet and where you get them from later. Let's talk about PvE. PvE, if you want to go the most offensive tree, it's really this one, Naja. Why? Because you have a few things in here. And I'll talk about it in single target and multi-targets, or AoE perspective, right? So number one, the from an AoE, sorry, we'll do single target first. This is a very good one. While in combat, you gain a stack of Thrill Seeker for every 2 seconds, or 4 stacks on killing an enemy. At 4 stacks, Thrill Seeker is consumed to grant you a Euphoria, increasing your haste by 20% for 10 seconds. That's like a mini Bloodlust. It's actually quite nice for enhanced, especially because we are so dependent on haste. The other one, this is, not really that important. Doors of Shadow disorients all nearby enemies, and that's really just for PvP, but we're not using it. This is you loot 20% more infused rubies. It's whatever, another flavor item. And then this is for single target. Why is this for single target? Because of this. The first enemy you damage in combat is marked as your adversary. You deal 3% more damage to them, and they deal less damage to you. Now, here's the deal. This is where I think it's going to be very important to have this item for raid single target only, or even any PvP situation or PvE situation single target only. Not only are you getting mini Bloodlust, you're getting a 3% increased damage to that target. And like Sludge Fist, for example, single target, you're going to get 3% more damage, period. Now, the question is, does that outweigh your other offensive conduit? Does 3% increased damage over an entire fight, how does that compare to having another potency conduit? And I think I don't have the sims yet. We'll have the sims. We'll know the mathematical result. We'll also have people testing it. You'll see the logs when people do it in raid. But I think you're going to see that this one actually will be more beneficial than having one more potency conduit because of, a multitude of things. But this is my single target setup if you're in raid situation, if you're singly focused on single target. And I think this one's actually pretty nice, especially like people were focusing on Pelagos, getting 3% verse all the time. Well, this is now 3% more damage taken by you all the time. So let's go ahead. That's single target. If I was going to do AoE, really, I would want to do a few different things. I would want to change this up a little bit. This tree with the haste is still very nice. I would want to basically go down the same tree, but because I'm doing AoE, AoE is really with Hailstorm. And in this situation, I think you need to do a few things. Number one, these are flavor items for the most part, right? You can go this for movement speed. You can go this for self heals. Remember, we're PvE AoE. Number one, if you're going to be taking Hailstorm, taking Chill to the core is pretty nice. It's not the craziest thing ever because I think if it does proc right, it'll you're going to have more Maelstrom stacks than you can probably handle. But that's going to be a good one to take in my opinion. The other one to take, I'm a little torn on. Focus Lightning could be okay, but Lavish Harvest is also pretty decent because the increased crit chance on Chain Harvest by 10% is pretty useful. I mean, having that increased crit chance, the more it crits, remember, the more the reduced the cooldown of it is. So I think this could be something if you're going for a big pop. But otherwise, I see Focus Lightning, which is Maelstrom Weapon increases the damage or healing of your next spell by an additional 1% per stack. So that means up to 5%. It's not the best, but it's something that could help. Otherwise, you could go Unruly Winds, still trying to fish for those Wind Fury, additional Wind Fury hits to reset Storm Strikes and such. But I think Focus Lightning or I think the Lavish Harvest are really the goes on this one. And one other thing, I'll just go back to PvP really quick. And because some people have asked me this question, and by the way, that's the end of AoE. For PvP, I just want to go back to that really quick. The other one you can go is if you find you're dying a lot, you can go a Resto Shaman conduit, which is this one, Swirling Currents. Basically, when you use Healing Stream Totem, it makes your next healing of your next 3 healing surges for Enhance go up by 20%. This actually does work with Enhance. You can drop that Healing Stream Totem, and you can get that 20% bonus. So this is still, it's possible for you to use this in a very defensive option if you find you're dying a ton and you really need healing throughput. You'll see later with my PvP recommendations, I also recommend you get a Resto Legendary for Enhance, and I said the same thing for Ellie because it helps you survive. But with that being said, this is it. This is the PvP, the PvE setups. They're locked and loaded into the spreadsheet over here, so you can check that out. But that's that. Those are the Soulbinds I recommend that you start to focus on. And I'm sure over time, as you unlock those Soulbinds, which will take weeks and weeks and weeks as you get more renowned with your Covenant, it'll take you a while to fill this up. So we'll get even more data, tuning, all that stuff before the raid comes out, particularly Mythic, right? So that's that. Let's go ahead and shift gears to Conduits. Conduits, I've reviewed all the specs of Shaman here and my thoughts on these. The way that you get Conduits, I'll give you this other spreadsheet. Again, it's in the resource section of the Discord, but this was created by by some other folks, and this is an incredible resource. You can see Enhancement Shaman, Unruly Winds drops from Hakar, which is the other side, so you'll know where to go to get your Conduit drops, which is an incredible resource for you to know. Now, I've reviewed these each, and I've said, and I've already told you which ones I like a lot, but I've said that these are best, decent, based on what you builds you're going, and all of that. So I think you can look at this if you want to get a reminder, and you can also need to remember that over the weeks that you're grinding these conduits, they're going to continue to rank up, and they're going to get more valuable over time, and the meta will shift for what you're going to be going when, based on that. More Wind Fury procs, up to 35% chance, more increased scaling damage, 1% to 4.5% per stack. Keep that in mind. Now, the other thing I'll mention is the Covenant Conduits are here. They're usually quite valuable for whatever Covenant you're going. If you're not going Venthyr, you're going something else, you should at least know what's over here, and they're always pretty valuable, in my opinion. So that's something for you to look at. Now, that's this tab for you in case you want to use this as a resource. Now, the next one is going to be Legendaries. Legendaries for Enhance. I've been telling everybody, please don't freak out. We have weeks of time before the raid comes out. Don't necessarily just jump the gun and use and spend your Soul Ash. If you don't know what Soul Ash is basically how you are going to create your Legendaries. It's one of the it's kind of the bottleneck material as part of the legendary crafting process. You get Soul Ash every week. There's a certain max you can get per week from Torghast, which is almost like Visions, but hopefully a lot better. And you can run with one to many people, or solo, whatever it is. So just keep that in mind. The other thing you need to know is to get a legendary, to know the recipe to craft it, you have to get it from a particular source again. I have the sources listed here in the Google spreadsheet. In case you're curious, like for example, Enhancement Shaman to get Doom Winds is from the Spires of Ascension, which is a dungeon. Easy. Torghast is from, Torghast for Frost Witch is like, well, Torghast the right wing might not be open. Maybe it won't be Cold Heart, area for you to be able to do that area. So you might not be able to get this one for multiple weeks. So don't fret. Balancing might still come. The way you get these is going to be, it's not going to change, but, the world boss that's available, the way to get it is different. But remember, no matter what spec you are, if you do that content and you're a shaman, you'll get that drop. You'll get those conduits. You'll get those legendary recipes. So keep that in mind. Now, for Legendaries Enhance, I've reviewed them, and I also have a video here in case you want to see the in-depth review. I do a kind of a review of them, but let's go ahead and I'll go through them very quickly with you. I've ranked them for PvE and PvP because you guys know we do every spec of Shaman in PvE, PvP. The number one Legendary for me in PvE, PvP for Enhance offensively is Doom Winds. You do get that from Davos, which is the dungeon. It's when you drop a Wind Fury Totem, it gives you every 1 minute. It gives you 100% chance to get Wind Fury weapon and increase Wind Fury weapon damage by 25% for 12 seconds. Incredibly powerful. The damage is sick. Single target, I think it's going to be, this is it. This is the answer, right? So for PvE and PvP, it pops, it pops so hard. So that's very good. We can get that very early if you choose to. Otherwise, like I see the Frost Witch, I've actually had a lot of success in PvE with this one. It makes the rotation of an Enhanced Shaman feel very, very smooth. I recommend if you're having any issues with Enhanced Shaman and the rotation, running out of globals, this legendary lets you reset Storm Strike cooldown, which is very valuable. It increases the damage of the Storm Strike as well, but just not as much as it used to. Consuming 5 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon will reset the cooldown of Storm Strike. So in other words, let's say you're running out of buttons, but you have Maelstrom Weapon stacks. Spend the Maelstrom Weapon stacks. All of a sudden, you got Storm Strike back. So it's very valuable for you. Now, on to the next one, Witch Doctor's Wolf Bones. This is one that I think is nice. I just don't know. I still have a problem with the dogs, right? They buffed Feral Spirits, but not that much, right? And unfortunately, because of that, I'm not really sure where this one sits for PvE. For PvP, I don't think it's that good. Increasing the stacks of, chance to get Maelstrom Weapon stacks, not that crazy to me. I think that the more beneficial one is the cooldown of Feral Wolves is reduced based on the Maelstrom you generate. Think about Hailstorm, think about Frost Shock. All these things that are going to be constantly spending and building Maelstrom. The only problem I have is just the Wolves, they don't do that much damage, and they're RNG based if you go the talent. I will say this, it's quite fun. You'll see in the video, I give a clip. I was able to use Wolves multiple times a boss fight, which is fun. I like the playstyle. That's why I have it as A, but I don't know about the damage output, so that's where I'm there. This one is the Primal Lava Actuators. Basically, Flame Shock is going to buff your Lava Lash and reduce the cooldown. This is one's a little weird for me. I've heard that it does good single target, but for me, it's just kind of awkward. So that's why I have it there. Now, that's it for these. Let me just quickly go over the general ones. Chains of Devastation, I think, is kind of a meme, but it could maybe be useful in PvP, kind of as like a survivability play, but it's going to cost a lot of globals to use. I love it for resto, but not really for that. For this one, which is deeply rooted elements, it's every time you storm strike, you have a chance to pop Ascendance, which could do AoE damage and do a lot of other things. I don't think the RNG is worth the investment at this point. Maybe get it later. But anyway, that's that. Again, how you get these, I have the recipes. I'll be putting that other spreadsheet here. Big shout out to the creators of this. But here's here's my breakdown and my review of them. And now let's talk about some of the builds. These are some of the builds that I will put out there in the Google Doc. You'll be able to see them, the talents and all that setup. But let's first talk about stat priority. Number one, haste is critically important in PvE. And before I even go any further, I'll just say this is based on my experience. It's not based on sims. We'll get the sim data. We'll know the official stat weightings, and then you'll be able to build around that. So definitely check out raid bots when that sims are available, when simulation craft's all done. Now, my recommendation based on my guess is that haste is going to be number one priority for enhance because of the melee hits, the wind fury hits, the maelstrom weapon procs, right? Of course. And I was feeling about 22% in the mythic raid test, which is a video down below. It felt good. For crit, I think that's going to be the second one. Even though I want it to be mastery, I think it's going to be crit. So then after crit, mastery, then verse in PvE situations. For PvP, I think number one priority is getting that haste up there, maybe to 20%, and then you go to crit, you go to verse. You want to stack that verse so you don't get bazinged. Then you want to go back to haste, crit, mastery after that. Now, again, this is just based on my feeling, my guesses so far. Now, let's talk about the racials. The racials for Alliance, I think it's Dwarf. You could go Dark Iron. But for Dwarf, getting that plus 2% crit damage is good. For enhance, even though there's, that's about it for Alliance. For Horde, I think there's a much more variety. You could go Troll for more haste ratio. You could go Orc for the agility ratio, as well as the pet damage for your pets, technically. And then Tauren for the 2% crit damage as well could be good. You could also go Zandalarian. I mean, really, if you want to go, you should go whatever you want to go. Go based on the looks. The damage differences are very, very, very minor for Shaman, so I would definitely recommend go what you want to be looking at. For PvP, the answer is Dwarf or Orc, but again, go what you want. Do what you want. I think you'll be much happier that way, and I've never heard somebody regretting that option. The last thing I'll say before we get into the next part about the builds is the Ever-Chilling Brambles and Briar Sprout are the two trinkets I enjoyed the most testing on the beta. I recommend you maybe check those out or even look at a VOD because they're pretty cool and their damage was pretty significant as part of the testing. All right, for the builds, let's go ahead and go over that. Number one, this would be my PvP setup. I would go this for PvP. I think that this would be is the strongest offensively using Doomwind's Legendary, as well as using Forceful Winds, of course, because you're using Doomwinds. All the Storm Strike stuff, Storm, Flurry, Elemental Assault. You might need to go Feral Lunge sometimes to close the gap against casters. Otherwise, Sunder and Ascendance for that big pop. You want Shamanism for the Bloodlust. It's going to be great for leveling too. You want Grounding Totem if there's ever any casters or anyone that could do any CC that's magic based. It's critically important. I'm actually a little sad it's not baseline, but that's okay. And then Swelling Waves I'm using for healing, but you could go Thunder Charge for reduced cooldowns as well as Ride the Lightning. I think Thunder Charge will find a place in the battle. We've seen some people, very creative people, share some builds about it. This Legendary is obviously the offensive one. If I go down to, Enhanced PvP, right? I'm going to be using, I don't want to be using that trinket, but yeah, so that's the build. Now, if I wanted to go a more defensive setup, what I recommend is that you go for the Legendary that's for Earthshield. People might be meme me here, but if you go the resto one, this will make you more, it won't make you more tanky, but it'll make you have significantly more self-heals. If you go this, Swelling Waves, the self-heals plus 15%, Swelling Waves giving you the other, repeating 50% of the heal later. A lot of stuff can stack up for your healing. The only problem is to get the heals off, you got to get those Maelstrom weapon stacks up to really make it super powerful. Now, because you can only get about 4 heals off before your unforge. But those are the two builds for PvP I recommend. Now for PvE, what I recommend is two things. One is a single target build. The single target build could use Elemental Spirits in Mythic Plus. I've seen that do very well. In other situations, I've often used Earthen Spike in the raid situations. That's felt good. So between these two, I've used Ascendant sometimes, but mainly I've been sticking with these two options, Earthen Spike as another global. And also if I'm single targeting with Doomwinds, I can lock and load this up, which is a plus 20% damage increase when I'm using my Wind Fury pop, right? Otherwise, this is the build I would be going. I also think if you don't go Doom Winds, Elemental Blast is doing significant damage. It used to be Lashing Flames maybe doing the most damage. I think Elemental Blast is actually pretty sweet. I want to think that there's builds out there for this, maybe with Frost Switch. But I've actually had some pretty good experiences with this single target, and spending it on Elemental Blast gives you those stats, which could help as well, especially if it's that haste. So that's the single target setups I would recommend. Now for AoE, I recommend going Hailstorm, Elemental Spirits, and this is kind of the setup. This tier is going to be different, right? For the Legendary, I recommend going Doom Winds again. It's just so much damage and is a lot of consistent damage. Even when you're going AoE, right, in a Mythic Plus, you don't want to be a limp noodle when you go into the boss fight and you go for single target, which is one of the reasons why I really like Doom Winds, is that it doesn't make us like kind of fall down on the meters when we're still trying to do single target damage on the boss, while Hailstorm's still pumping. Now remember, Elemental Spirits, when you use them, it's an RNG option of 3 wolves. You get two wolves, and each of them could be one of the 3. So you can get some that are doing, like this one I just got was icy, so it does more, actually does a lot of melee damage, but increases my frost damage. Think of Hailstorm. My fire doing damage by Lava Lash as well. So the other thing that I'll mention is there's one, I didn't get it, that increases Wind Fury damage. So you want to sync this up with your Doom Winds and some other things, because you could get Storm Strike buff or Wind Fury buff by 35%. That's pretty big while stacking it with everything else, right? So keep that in mind. Now, again, I think there is another possible builds here that are going to be common. Like I said, Doom Winds is one option. The other one I actually do really like for AoE is using Legacy of the Frost Witch. I mean, the resetting of your Storm Strike is just so nice. And especially if you're having global issues. If you're having global issues, you really need to consider this one, because it will make things a lot smoother for you. And I actually had my best parsing damage, which was only like 2 or 3 minutes in the Mythic Raid, as this one on a boss fight. So I definitely think that it's a good option for you to take. Now, otherwise, the other Legendaries, like we already talked about, the Wolves one, all those, I think they're okay, but I think those 2 are really the key for PvE. There are some builds I've heard about: Hot Hand, Lashing Flames, and the Lava Lash Legendary, the Frost Shock Legendary, or Flame Shock Legendary. But personally, these are the ones that I've been mainly focused on. That one maybe it comes out as like the king in a few weeks, but at least this is my guidance for you for now. So with that being said, guys, we've gone over a lot. We've done a lot. We've gone over pretty much the leveling build that I'm going to be using, the conduit recommendations I have for you, and the resources that I've provided to help you out, the conduits and Soulbind paths and why I've gone what I'm going, and a way for you to check it out yourself. We've gone over where to get the Legendaries, where to get the Conduits. We've gone over stat priority estimates. We've gone over the trinkets I like to use, the builds I like to use. I've shared the Discord link with all the resources with you guys for this and more, and all the other specs. I have the Mythic Dungeon Guide that is going over a 2-minute review of every single dungeon to make it easy for you. If you haven't seen that yet, that's up here. This is going to be a really easy way for you to go into, and I have a Google Doc for this too. You can go ahead and you can copy and paste the strat into chat and copy paste, put it in there. You can't see it, but it's really easy to be there, right? So that's how you can help out your fights, your teams. If you're pugging, I also have the videos here for your help as well. If you want to watch a 2-minute video on each boss fight. Whew. All right, that's a lot of stuff. Well, that's it, though. That's it. If you have any questions, make sure to hit me up on Discord. If you have any questions or suggestions, give me some tips. Give me some feedback. We'll make this the best guide possible for you guys. And if you disagree with something, don't rage. Let me know, and let's keep improving things for our enhanced shamans out there. This is just the beginner entry point as we get into Shadowlands. A lot of more stuff's going to be found out as we get millions of people in the game. So with that being said, come by the stream every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come share your thoughts. Come share the excitement. We're doing a pre-launch Shadowlands event where we're going to be giving away a microphone, G Fuel, a lot of other things. So it's going to be a really good time. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for the love. Thank you to the Patreons. Thank you to the Twitch subs. Thank you guys all for the love and support. We're going to keep grinding in Shadowlands, and we'll see you in the next video or on stream. Oh, and I was just recently sponsored by G Fuel, so shout out to them. If you guys do drink G Fuel, use that code Tiqqle for a 10% discount. And thank you guys for the love.